The global fashion industry is massive, worth over $1 trillion, and its current state is not sustainable. From the amount of water used and polluted, to the use of toxic chemicals, clothing waste that ends up in the landfill, the poor treatment of garment workers, and the greenhouse gas emissions from production and shipping.
To shift an industry of this size in a responsible direction is a huge undertaking and involves many stakeholders, from the brands and retailers to the people who buy clothes, from government officials to nonprofit groups. This short video will explain who is responsible for making fashion more sustainable and how you, as an individual, can take action.
Brands and retailers have a massive role to play in changing the broken fashion system. They must make every effort to protect their workers from unsafe conditions and pay them better wages. They need to promote gender equality, prevent child and forced labor, as well as the use of sweatshops. They must be more open and transparent about how and where clothes are made. They need to reduce greenhouse gas emissions across their supply chain, address issues of deforestation and water pollution, save natural resources, and reduce waste.
There are a number of global industry associations that serve the brands, retailers, manufacturers, most of which are members-based. These groups help the industry make more responsible choices when it comes to the materials they source, the emissions their clothing generates, and they provide frameworks, indexes, standards, and benchmarks that are valuable resources. There are several nonprofit organizations that play an important role in raising citizen awareness, supporting brands as they transition towards sustainability, and in some cases even putting pressure on brands and manufacturers, often calling on citizens to voice their concerns.
Some of these groups include Fashion Takes Action, RCGD Global, Fashion Revolution, Remake, the International Labour Organization, and the Fair Wear Foundation. Many of these groups have ways for the average person to get involved and take action, whether that be signing a petition, sending a letter to government officials, or to your favorite brand demanding transparency or change, or sharing the overall message through social media channels.
Did you know that today we buy 100 billion units of clothes, even though there are not even 8 billion people on the planet? When we buy too many cheap clothes, we tend to not take care of them, because if they fall apart, we can just go out and buy something else. But the true cost of cheap clothes is on the women who make them in punishing conditions and on our planet. And so the best way to be sustainable is to buy less, to buy better, and use the time and money we save to advocate for the women who make our clothes.
As a citizen and consumer of fashion, you and I also have a role to play. We need to be more aware of the choices and purchases we make, how often we buy clothes, how we care for them, and what we do with them once we no longer want them.
We buy 60% more clothes today than we did 20 years ago. When we over-consume fashion, it sends a message to the industry that we want more, and so they continue to make more. When we buy cheap, fast fashion, we tend to not care for it the same way we would an investment piece, because if it falls apart after a few washes, we could just go out and buy another one. If you must buy something new, then it's important to check if the brand can back up any sustainability claims they're making. All too often, a brand will use terms in their marketing to attract more eco-conscious customers, but in many cases, these claims are false. You can also check rating apps like Good On You to see how the brand does in terms of people, planet, and animal welfare.
And of course, we can rent clothes, repair ones that have holes, sell our old clothes or donate them, repurpose them into something new and better, or at the very least, turn them into rags. Bottom line is we have to stop throwing out our clothes, because globally, there are 92 million tons of textiles in landfill. Government laws, regulations, and policies can incentivize the adoption of sustainable production, hold companies accountable, and even create an extended producer responsibility program, where the retailers have to pay to take back their clothes for reuse or recycling. They can implement mandatory design requirements that address the release of microfibers from our synthetic clothes. And they can subsidize high-quality clothing and penalize wasteful resource consumption. Not only this, but the governments can invest in and support research to help the industry get to net zero emissions. They can create stricter environmental regulations and manufacturing processes to protect their citizens, especially those who make our clothes.
Some countries introduced laws to prevent goods into their country that were made under modern slavery conditions. This is now evolving into human rights due diligence legislation, which takes legally binding measures to ensure all workers are protected. The Fabric Act was introduced to protect nearly 100,000 U.S. garment workers by improving working conditions, reforming the piece rate pay scale, and investing in domestic apparel production. And there's also the New York Fashion Act, which, if it passes, will be the first U.S. law to explicitly place sustainability requirements aimed at large fashion companies who do business in New York.
As we look forward to the future of sustainable fashion, we should see continued progress and growing interest in items that are regenerative, sustainable, and long-lasting. Technology and innovation are key for the future of the sustainable fashion industry, and eventually we need to phase out synthetic fibres while continuing to explore innovation to improve sourcing, regenerative technology, and textile-to-textile recycling. Pieces made from biodegradable and sustainable materials, eco-friendly packaging, and the use of dead stock will hopefully become the norm.
As citizens, we need to place quality over quantity by consuming less and valuing utility, versatility, and durability. Circularity should remain at the forefront of product design, and circular models such as resale, repair, and renting should become more widely offered to customers.
Ultimately, sustainable solutions for the fashion industry is a shared responsibility.
Brands and retailers influence all areas of the supply chain, and manufacturers can collaborate on more coordinated efforts for more responsible production practices.
As citizens, when we buy clothes, we need to think about people and planet, as well as taking better care of our garments and trying our best to keep them in use for as long as possible.
And finally, governments must create an environment that is conducive to change, that enables all the stakeholders to accelerate their efforts.